Alright, hi, I'm Goodnight Girl, and this is going to be a tutorial on how to use MilkyTracker for Game Boy Studio and Game Boy Tracker Player, GPT Player. The reason I'm doing this is because I use MilkyTracker all the time for creating music for Game Boy, and GPT Player is really useful just to make stuff in a tracker and then export it and have it work in the Game Boy. But there is one extra little step and a few things that you should know in general about its current version. Writing this as of July 16th. Anyway, so I've got Template.mod opened up here. Forgive me if the keyboard shortcuts don't make sense. I'm using the Fast Tracker 2 shortcuts. But you're probably familiar with this if you've ever opened up a new project. Anyway, so that's our song, and basically this is actually a template to create new songs with, but we're not going to use any of this note data. The important part is that we have all these instruments here that actually contain the samples that or the audio blips that the Game Boy is going to be creating. These are recorded after the fact, and they're not exactly one-to-one samples, so they're kind of distorted. Like, this is supposed to be a square wave, but it's a little bit torn up because it's trying to emulate how the Game Boy is going to sound. In the end, I found that this just makes it so that all of your songs in the tracker sound worse compared to when they're in the Game Boy, so it's always like a satisfying feeling to actually hear your songs properly. So these are all currently just named as like channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Ignore these names, but do remember the numbers that are next to them, because that's what we're going to be referring to. In the music docs, there should be a chart full of all the different instrument numbers and what they represent. So like this is a, I think it's a 12.5 pulse. This is a, it's a 25% pulse, this one. This is a square. This is inverted, the first. And then this is an even shorter pulse. Yeah, this is our 12.5 pulse. And then we've got our wave channel sounds. You get the idea. And our noise channel. But I'll get to that later once we start composing. So for the first step of this, I would say go up to Zap and delete the song. Now hit Save As. Please hit Save As. Don't hit Save, hit Save As. Select .xm and make a new file, save it somewhere that you know where it's going to be. Always save as that XM file. I'm using the internal file browser because I'm used to it from Fast Tracker, but it'll basically have the same principle when you're doing it in your own computer system. So now we have an XM file, but the difference between like doing mod stuff and XM stuff is that you can't use this volume column. It just will get ignored in mod files that contain it. And in the case of MilkyTracker, if you go from XM to mod, it will automatically convert this into this. And that's pretty important to know, because if you're trying to do another effect, say like this, and I also have volume on this, this effect is going to get overwritten by whatever's in the volume. So just don't use volume unless you really want to save yourself some time and you know exactly what you're doing. But yeah, so let's see here. I've got my first two channels. I want to make something happen in the first channel. Let's just do anyway, so there's my melody. First thing I'm going to do is set the volume to make sure that this is not played at max volume. I want to put this a little bit quieter, me personally, because I want to have another instrument playing at the same time. So I'll get back to that later. And in fact, I'll start here, and notice what you hear in the tracker if I just let this play. The second note is louder. But in the game, it's going to take the volume parameter that you set back up here and copy it down to all the subsequent notes without any information. So all of these notes should play at the same half volume of C20. But in the tracker, it's going to reset it to C40 because that's what the global volume setting is at right now. I don't really know how to change that, but if you do, great, you can do that. But it's not super useful, and if you really just want to make sure that everything sounds exactly as you plan it to be, just fill the rest in, make it all happen like that. All right, cool. So we've got that going on. In my song, I also am not going to be using channel 2. The thing about channel 1 and 2 is their first note, like this, they're going to be playing automatically unless you set a volume or a note with volume on it. Basically, if I do this, this is going to play a note automatically. If I do this, channel 2 is going to play a note automatically. If I do this, channel 2 will be muted, and this won't be a problem. The same problem happens to channel 1, but I didn't need to do this because I kind of want channel 1 to be heard to start. If this doesn't work for some reason and channel 2 is still ringing out, just throw another note on there. Yeah, for channel 3, it is not really able to set the tempo without it blurting out a note as well, because if I did this, like this, this is also going to play at max volume, and every time that I make a new note on channel 3, I need to constantly reset the volume to make sure it remembers what it's doing. So here in our example, or even better yet, that's going to be exactly how it sounds in-game. So I want my channel 3 to be even quieter than that. Channel 3 only has volume increments of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's it. So you have to be really wise about where you're changing your volume. I want this to be quieter on, oh, hold on, where are we? There we are, okay. I want this to be quieter as sort of like a middle note. But I don't really have the room for that, so I'm just going to mute it here. But that means that I have to make the next note follow up like this. Even though I'm just changing the volume, this won't really work. It'll mess up the instrument and note data. So, sorry, if I did this, the instrument and note data gets messed up for channel 3. So just fill that all in. Now you might be noticing that I'm filling in the volume for each and every single note, and I actually don't really need to do that, especially for this. I can kind of delete the rest of this and be reassured that it's all going to be at the exact same volume that I set it to start. It's just not going to sound that way in the tracker. So that's the only reason that I'm doing this right now. But if I'm actually composing, I could just leave it alone and save myself a lot of time from having to do all of this extra C command stuff. Yeah. Alright, and last, for the beginning of my song, I'm going to add F. I'm not going to use the noise channel to start, so this makes it prime to put the tempo on, especially since F is going to overwrite the volume parameter of these two channels, the 1 and 2, and these are our channels that ring out, right? So unless we put C0 or a note that we intended to play, they're going to ring out and make noise. So channel 3 doesn't do that, but it will make a full max volume note if you put F on it. So for the noise channel, it kind of becomes the best candidate to set our speed. So with F, we've got speeds from 1 to 1F. And this basically means we can choose anywhere from 1 to, I believe it's 32 frames per note. So in this situation, our song is super slow because it's advancing these rows every 32 frames of a 60 frames per second screen. So every half a second, pretty much, is how fast this is going by. Now with the Game Boy, there's some weird conversion that goes on, and in fact, this might be changed a bit in a future version of GB Studio or GPT Player. So in this, just like don't worry about minor differences in the timing, but knowing that this is doing 32 frames, I want it to be a little bit faster. So let's go and do like 15 frames. No, 16 frames because we're one indexing here. We can't have F0, but we can have FF. Okay, that's still a little too slow. Let's go a little faster. Faster maybe. Oh, okay, maybe let's take this to 7. Okay, yeah, that's a nice and chill speed for our song, at least for now. I'm going to fill in the rest of this with just other stuff to make a one pattern long song, and then I'm going to test it in-game just to see how it sounds. Currently setting, I guess technically I don't need to enter notes here or volume data here because I'm playing the same thing over and over, but in this case I'm deciding to make these notes short, so I'm going to cut them off in the middle. And I don't need that either. I'm just getting rid of data so that I don't have to look at it and get confused about what's happening. And yeah, you're just gonna deal with stuff like notes are gonna run overtime. In fact, I'll prove one last little thing which will be really important, which is gonna add a noise channel hit here. Yeah, alright, perfect. So oh. And again, only doing this for the tracker, the volume is going to carry over in game. Alright, that was really important. So notice how I put this note at the end of the song, and even though it doesn't start with that noise being played, when my song loops, it's going to carry over back to the beginning. So it's really important that either you stop these notes before they loop over, or you have something like this, which will silence the note once it comes back around again. No, I can't do this because I'm too busy setting my F speed to 7. I forget what the default speed is, but you would get that instead of whatever speed you wanted to have. So in fact, just to double prove the point, I'm going to... Which sample is the... yeah, this one, 1C. So it's a really faint noise hit. There. Okay, cool. So now we have a song. It's an XM format, and we need it to put we need it to be in mod format for Game Boy Studio to read it. So we're gonna go save as mod and save. And now we have our song here. Now I need to open up a Game Boy Studio project and have a way to put that into my thing. So let's switch over now to Game Boy Studio. Okay, I can't capture the window, but basically if you opened up a new project, just a blank project, I'm calling mine My New Game, clicking open, and it should be... no matter. Okay, we'll just do display capture here. All right, so this is my new game. I'm gonna add a scene, and I'm not really going to do much in terms of gameplay or actors yet, because I just want to make sure that my music works. That's what I'm here to do, really. So currently, if I open up my project folder, we're going to see that, oh, right, okay, display capture. We've got this here. My new game, assets, music. This is Template.mod, but we want to throw our song into this. So if I open up the place where I saved the song, let's grab that from my MilkyTracker folder that I saved it in, paste it into my new game, and let's go to the start script. I made a script to play music, so I'm going to switch that to our song. I'm not going to play it in here. I mean, I could. Let's just... Okay, perfect. But it is still going to sound different. In fact, it might sound a different pitch even. It might skip some patterns when you're playing it in the Game Boy Studio menu here. So I would go ahead and I'm in fact going to add a wait script just so I can make sure everything is set up properly. Hit run and your game is going to build, and I keep forgetting I'm on display capture here. We're going to get our song playing in our game. As soon as it finishes building, alright, so here we go. Alright, cool. So there's our song. It's playing in our game. It's nice and all, but I want to try something a little different because there's certainly much more that I could go into with music, but there's one last thing that is pretty important to consider. I'm going to open up a... Is this one? No? One of these I had set to the sample project. Oh well, let's just make a new project. And let's go and pick our sample project now. Because our game, when it has a lot more stuff going on, is actually going to have the music kind of run a little bit slower. Not in the sense that it's actually just going to stop playing as fast consistently, but any amount of lag that you have in the game in terms of a frame rate dip is going to affect how fast the song plays. Because remember, our song is currently set to play one note every 7 frames. So if our frame rate goes from like 50 frames per second and dips down to like 45, that means it's got to wait during those 45 frames per second for every 7 frames to happen. And you are just going to get a little bit of inconsistency with the music. To me personally, that's kind of like part of the fun, is sort of working with it or against it. Although I kind of wish that we had more options for speed, but so be it. I'm just going to add in a music play track thing here and get the sample project started. And once that's loaded, we can see how our song differs in a game that has a lot more going on. So, you know, your logo, title screen, whatever, new game. Dang, okay. Ignore that. That's me fighting, there's a bit of a virus my computer has right now. I'm just doing this before I reset it, but it bottlenecks the performance every now and then. But hopefully before that happens, before the crackling, you could hear like the little hangs it had on the frame rate, and especially changing scenes, scrolling the screen, adding dialogue. That definitely tends to slow the music down. So that's kind of what you got to be careful of with your song in this case. You can adjust it retroactively, like increase the frame speed. So then your song will sort of sound more like this. You know, that's like on the worst day possible for the Game Boy, but just little things to consider, especially for the faster speeds. Yeah, so that's basically what you got to know to get your songs in here. I'm not sure if you noticed, just one last thing real quick, is that in the MilkyTracker here, I was assigning instruments to all of my notes, and channels 1 and 2 can only use these first 4 instruments. So I can only do this. If I do this, like if I tried to play this instrument, that's not correct. That's not going to work in the game. If I did the same over here with channel 3, there's no instruments in 5, 6, or 7, and that's just a hardware limitation. But 8 through F, these are all instruments that we can choose. So I could actually go, instead of 8, I could use F, I could use E, I could change every note if I really wanted to. Just why not? Yeah. And with the noise instruments, they're the same. They start from 10 and they go all the way up to 1F. But they're always going to work in C5. So actually, I did something incorrect here, which was in MilkyTracker, because it does 0 indexing, and because GBT Player was written with OpenMPT in mind, which does 1 indexing, we actually want C4 as the note to compare the proper sound that you're going to get out of the noise channel, because we don't actually have different pitches for the noise channel. It's always going to refer to C4 when 0 indexed. So that's pretty important. We can't do that. There's only that. It shouldn't be any higher or lower, and that's basically what you're going to hear in game. It'll probably be a bit different because these are recordings of generations, and the generations in actuality could definitely sound different. Especially this one, which sounds like really sampled, when in reality it's just a really long recording of this minuscule noise generator that sounds like TV static. So yeah. The only other thing to know, pretty much, because y'all are experts at this now, is when you're creating new patterns, you should probably know this from using MilkyTracker in the past, to insert and then create a new pattern by pressing plus, or just switch the pattern you're using. Like I want this to play twice, and then I want a new pattern. But say I want to have this pattern to be in 6/8 instead of 4/4. I'd switch it down to 30, I think. So then I would instead be doing something like this. I'm muting that channel because it was playing previously, but now I'm going to take use of channel 2 and switch to a valid instrument. Let's do the square. And let's do 1 note every 3 notes, or 1 note every 3 rows. Okay, so this is great. Okay, it's not great, but you know, it's enough. So if I wanted this to actually work the way that it does, and not be any longer, automatically GBT Player is going to play this as a 40 or like hexadecimal 40 row long pattern, and I want it to end earlier. So I'm going to use B on the very last heard note. Like, let's say that I've got this going on at the end, and I want that to be heard. So on the last heard note, I'm going to add this B, and I'm going to tell it to jump to pattern 0. If I tell it to jump to pattern 1, it's not going to jump to this one because it's technically pattern 1, but because it's in position 2 of our pattern list. So that's how B works. It's okay if you don't have this on stuff that's shorter. It's just if you want it to loop back and jump to previous stuff. This does mean that your song always has to loop if you are skipping to a pattern number previous to the one that the B command is on, because this is going to go to B1, and then it's going to go back to 2, and then it's going to loop back to 1, and it'll just keep going. Even unchecking the loop thing in GB Studio is not going to stop it from looping. Yeah. There is a whole bunch of other stuff you could do with like EC, I think it is, the arpeggio effect, but that is basically stuff that you could learn just from going through MilkyTracker tutorials proper. And totally try experimenting with switching instruments, especially on the noise channel. That's how you get some of the really cool sounds. Please read the music docs. You can also ask the Discord if you have any more questions. But this is basically what my process looks like, and I hope something was learned from you checking it out. Oh yeah, this is what happens if you try to save a mod file. It'll like warn you. Don't do it. It's going to corrupt. Save as. Please. Thank you. Okay. Thanks for checking this out.